What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our college basketball top 25 rankings for week 14. Little less than a month away from the conference tournaments and a little over a month away from March Madness beginning. And this is where we have the top 25 teams in college basketball right now. So we'll get into it. But first, we're going to talk about the teams that fell from our rankings. Miami with two ugly losses, Iowa State with a tough schedule in the Big 12 coming up, and Colorado State with an ugly loss. But Ty, of these others receiving votes, who intrigues you the most here?
I gotta go with Wyoming and Arkansas. Wyoming is really hitting their stride, and they haven't made the tournament in 5 or 6 years, so it's a historic season for them. And then Arkansas is starting to find themselves again after they were originally in the top five early in the season. So they're a team to watch out for.
And on Wyoming, that Mountain West kind of is no joke this year. You got Boise State, Wyoming, we had Colorado State last week. Top three teams there. UNLV could pull off some surprise wins too. So definitely a slept on conference this year. But another slept on team is that Davidson team, pulling off the huge upset against Alabama when they were good. Tough loss a few weeks ago, but getting right back on track. And they're just a few upset losses away from getting right back into the top 25. And at 25, you're kind of wondering to yourself, we have a team that went 1-1 that entered the rankings for the first time. It's more or less because they're in the Big East and it's a little better than the Mountain West is this year. But two tough games this week. Going into Seton Hall is always a tough place to play. And UConn, let's see how they bounce back this week. I think this Xavier team is kind of, starting to fall apart. We've seen a lot of close games come down to the wire for them, and we'll see if that trend continues.
All right, we got UConn dropping to 24 after an 0-2 week. Just a bad week altogether. Bad loss at home to Creighton, and then the game wasn't really close at Villanova. And now you got a tough turnaround. I mean, they could lose all three this week if they don't get themselves figured out. Marquette's a really good team right now. At Xavier, at St. John's, all tough games. So they got to get that figured out. I was pretty high on them, but not sure what happened this week. Got to turn it around fast.
23rd, we have that St. Mary Gales team. And, they finally got another team in the conference for Gonzaga to just beat and have another ranked win this year, essentially. I don't really know. There's not too much to report on this team as, the beginning of the year, they were kind of I think they were 9-1 at one point. A team that, was about to enter the rankings and had, I think, two tough losses, but we never really heard of them until here they are. And they just kept finding ways to win. And in this crazy year of college basketball, any win is a good win. And that's why you're ranked here at 23rd.
All right, Texas stays put here at 22. A good win over Iowa State to even out that loss at Texas Tech. But I don't know if any teams would have won at Texas Tech in that environment. The way they were just getting on Chris Beard, tough place to play there. But here you go. This week you get rewarded with Kansas and Baylor. So, I mean, you got to win one of those games. You got to find a way if you're Texas. If they want to reach their goals that they had in the beginning of the season. So we'll see if they can get one of those.
21st, we got another not ranked team last week in the Marquette Golden Eagles entering after beating Villanova at home as their only game of the week. Kind of a surprising win there. It was a tough matchup for Villanova, but Marquette came out on top, and a team that people are finally starting to recognize is, we've been talking about Shaka Smart, his first year here, making some big noise in the Big East. And definitely the Big East has been very entertaining this year. And let's see how this Marquette team can go on the road against UConn, a team that's, desperately needing a win, and Marquette, to bolster that resume as well. But definitely should be a good early game, early week matchup.
All right, Tennessee with a big jump to 20, more just because teams are losing. But Tennessee has been looking really solid their last few games, kind of quietly. We've never really been high on this team, but lately they're showing that they can score to go along with their defense. They shot the lights out in their last game. This week at Mississippi State, that's a tough game against a really underrated team. But if they can win both games this week, they're on pace to really be a top four seed in the tournament.
19th, we got Murray State moving up a spot due to some losses. And I mean, 22-2, and I'm gonna say it, as long as they're up here, one of their two losses was to Auburn, the number one team in the country. And I think I bet on that game. Took the spread, and Murray State played them pretty tough. Yeah, they made a loss by double digits, but hey, I mean, early in the year, you don't really know what teams are really good yet. And it turns out that both these teams are going to be really good teams entering March, as if they play the way they have been playing. But I expect two more, not easy wins because it's always tough to win on the road, but definitely favorable matchups for the Murray State Racers.
All right, Michigan State falling to 18. Uh, Gutted out a win at Maryland. Good job on their part to get out of there with a close win. But they turned around and got hammered by Rutgers. A lot of that's because Rutgers just shot the lights out, similar to how they did against Michigan. Um, but, a 20-point loss to Rutgers is never, a great thing to turn around on. And
Mhm.
not that's kind of a back to the drawing board game, especially when you have Wisconsin coming in this week. So two big home games coming up, and they can get right back on track if they can win both of them.
If you're like me, don't bet on this Michigan State team. This week I was 0 for 2, took the spread in the Maryland game, screwed me there, and then took a
Yeah.
money line and got blown out by 20. So if you're looking for betting, staying away, Michigan State is that team as of right now. And at 17th, we got the Ohio State Buckeyes with a pretty convincing win yesterday against Maryland. Wasn't really a game. They just did their thing, stick to the game plan. And two games that you could get upset in just because we just saw Rutgers pull off a huge upset against Michigan State. They'll be riding some momentum into that game. Then obviously Ohio State, Michigan, the rivalry 2.0, I guess you could say for basketball. Michigan really needs a win, and obviously in a rivalry game you play, hopefully a lot better and more competitive. It's always tough to win on the road, as we say. And I think, a 1-1 week this week for Ohio State is a successful week.
We got USC here at number 16 with their loss to Arizona. And, this team just seems to slowly fall in the rankings, and rightfully so. This week they got a cupcake game, but then they got UCLA coming in. My gripe with UCLA or USC, sorry, is that they haven't really beat a good team, in my opinion. They haven't beat a team that's currently in our rankings this season. And, they started out, I think it was 16-0. So it was hard not to have them in the top 5. But at this point, they're just going to keep falling if they can't beat these teams. So they got to beat UCLA this week.
And at 15th, making a big jump up is Illinois with a huge win against Wisconsin and Indiana at their place. I mean, we saw Michigan go in there and beat them, and it was, surprising to say the least that Indiana lost at home. And now I think Indiana's fallen back down to earth. They were on that cloud 9 for all month of January, it felt like. And now they started to struggle, but you can't discount this Illinois team. Kind of fitting right where we thought they would be preseason wise, maybe not that 1 seed line, but pretty dang close. And I think you got the best game of the year in the Big Ten so far at Purdue. We'll see how Kofi can match up against the big 3, but Curbelo, I think, is going to be the key in that game to seeing how good Illinois can be against good teams. And then no matter what happens, they should have a cupcake game against Northwestern. But, we've seen Northwestern play some teams tough in the Big Ten, and, it's college basketball this year. Anything can happen.
All right, we got Villanova staying put this week. So a bad loss, I guess, to Marquette, just in terms of the fact they got swept, which never happens for Villanova, which is why I picked them. They let me down, but they turned around and beat up on UConn, which is a good win for them at home against a good team. This week, if they want to be a national championship contender, they should win both of those games fairly easily. And coming off that win, I think they really found themselves again in that UConn game. So I think they should win both of those games and work their way back towards the top 10.
And at 13th, we got the Wisconsin team that I just talked about briefly. Tough loss at Illinois, win at Penn State, and how are you rewarded with a 1-1 week with more than likely a good shot at going 1-1 again. At the Breslin, it's always tough to play there, and especially when it's a ranked matchup like it is, it's going to be rocking. And then at home against Rutgers, who we just saw pull off the huge upset against Michigan State. So they're going to ride some momentum into that game. But I don't know. The Big Ten, I think, is, I want to say, the most up for grabs, conference, just because of how good all these teams are. But then again, you got the SEC, the Big 12, and it seems like every single conference has lined up where it really is a coin flip for the last month. So I don't know. I don't know where to go for this Wisconsin team, but I think if they can keep shooting the way they have been, I think the only way to go for them is up.
All right, UCLA, big drop from 4 to 12, but they got swept on their Arizona trip this week. Bad loss to Arizona State. You can forgive them for the Arizona game. They showed a lot of fight, but then they turn around and lose to a 6-win Arizona State team. Kind of a head scratcher there. So now you get Stanford on the road and you get USC, your big rival. So another difficult week for UCLA, but they got to bounce back. I was really high on them going into last week. Not sure what happened, but they got to figure out some more scoring outside of their bigs.
At 11, we got Baylor. Tough loss at Kansas. I mean, it wasn't even a tough loss. It was probably an easy loss because, they got blown out. So they probably didn't feel too bad about it. They just had a bad game. Kansas had a really good game. A game that was getting hyped pretty well, could be the Big 12 game of the year, and Kansas absolutely throttled them. I think this week is a response week. If you can go into Kansas State, a team that's slowly pulling off some good close games, maybe the results aren't going their way, but they're making it tough to win at their place. And then you got Texas, who's got a tough week ahead of them. And I think if you're Baylor here, once again, you were just talking about if you want to be a national championship team, these are the games you got to win. Getting 21-4, probably a move back in the top 10, just because we've seen how the college basketball landscape has changed over a week-to-week basis.
All right, Texas Tech with a big jump to number 10 and a big win over Texas at home that really just continues to show that this team, I see them as a top 5 team in the country, just, talent wise and the way they've been playing. But we got to keep them a little lower than that because they do have 5 losses. But now that they're healthy, I think they can contend with anybody in the country. And this week, if they can get through these 2 games, they're going to be right at the top of the Big 12 with a chance to win the conference. So they're a team to watch out for going forward.
And we're checking out all the viewers' comments out here, of course. Kenneth Haynes saying they're underrated. Probably not anymore because, big wins this week. And then Shane Shepard said, the Texas Tech team's only gotten stronger since then, which I agree, since the Gonzaga game. And I think that was kind of the turning point of, what does it take to be an elite team? And this Texas Tech has really started to shape into one. But here at 9, we got the Kentucky Wildcats, not going anywhere. Just pretty easy games. The Alabama game, they weren't favored in, which is why I bet on it because, they won by double digits. Kind of a surprise there. I know that Alabama has been super inconsistent, but I mean, Kentucky has been super consistent. I think, when they went in there and absolutely throttled Kansas, I think that's the moment for me where, all right, this Kentucky team is a national championship contender, no doubt in my mind. And in the SEC, I think they've already played a lot of tough games. So they got a lot of easy games coming up, this week. As you can see, South Carolina and Florida. I think a team that's moving to 21-4 and could be moving up a spot, depending on how these other teams fare this week.
All right, Kansas comes in at number 8. A great week for them. They go into Iowa State, tough building to win in, and they kind of handle business there. And then obviously they dominate Baylor at home. So a very big 2-0 week for them. And they really needed that after getting blown out by Kentucky in their own building. So this week at Texas is going to be a tough game, but they should take care of Oklahoma State. So at worst, 20-4, and they'll be in the top 10 either way. So can't really go wrong.
And at 7, we got my Providence Friars with 2 huge wins this week. At St. John's, at Georgetown, they gave them a run for their money, both games. But of course, the Friars came out on top. And I mean, we were talking about most underrated teams, early in the season, probably 10 games in. We didn't even mention Providence because I think, we were so blind to, I think, see what was happening just because in previous years what has happened. But for some reason this year, they've got some dudes that have just been balling out. They find ways to win. Ed Cooley knows what he's doing this year, 20-2 record. And if you're looking for an upset team, that could make a run in March Madness as a, 3, 4, 5 seed, even depending on how they fare in the upcoming Big East weeks. This Providence team could definitely be that team to make a run.
All right, Arizona moving back up now with 2 big wins, UCLA and USC. They take care of both of them. And, this team starting to really find themselves. It's kind of showing that UCLA game was kind of just an outlier for them. Their big shooter, Kirk Kriisa, went 0 for 10. I'm talking about the away loss, obviously, where they just could not make a shot. And I don't think that really resembles the basketball team they have. However, this week you get 3 road games in 1 week. So if they can get through all 3 of those games without a loss, I think they should definitely be in the top 5. Because that, no matter who you're playing, you have 3 road games in 1 week. That's a tough schedule coming off 2 big games. So, but going forward, their size and their shooting, they're a really scary team.
And at 5, moving up a spot, Houston Cougars. I mean, it seems like they just win now. No hesitation to consistently beat up on opponents. I mean, there's no really close calls, I feel like, in this Houston team. Memphis could be a close call game, just because of the talent they have. But realistically, it's going to probably be a blowout because it's at home for Houston. But another 20-2 week and a team that has only gotten better since Sasser went down, which is, we dropped them like 15 rankings because of that. And, they proved us wrong. And I think they're going to continue to prove everyone else wrong as they keep on winning.
All right, we got Duke here at number 4. I picked against them in the North Carolina game, and they just went in there and blew them out. And that's just a very difficult thing to do in what's the biggest rivalry in basketball. So huge win for them. This week, the ACC is pretty weak. So this week they got 3 fairly easy games, despite 2 of them being on the road. It's a really weak conference, so sometimes it's kind of hard to judge Duke. But they're 19-3, and they've already beat Gonzaga this year, so they deserve a spot in the top 5. And in Coach K's last year, they definitely have a chance to win the whole thing.
At 3, the top 3 remains the same, if you were wondering. We got Purdue. I mean, the Michigan game, it was kind of a lot closer than I thought it would be, coming from a Michigan fan, just because we've seen, everything that's happened. Then this week, how do you get a better schedule? Well, now you got Illinois at home, and you got at Michigan, which is, always a tough place to play. Thankfully, as Michigan fans, they got that game rescheduled. But I think it's too little too late, in all honesty, for Michigan to really make a run here. But Purdue, I think once again, 1-1 is a very successful week, playing against 2 teams that really are kind of vowing for that win. And once Jaden Ivey has taken over really the country, because he's still not getting talked about enough because of how great the college basketball players and teams have been this year. Till he takes over in March Madness, I think people are going to realize that Purdue has been a legit team all year.
All right. Once again, Gonzaga's holding steady at number 2. But this week, there actually is something to talk about. They went into a tournament team in BYU and beat them, I think, by 40. If I remember correctly, they were up by like 30 at halftime. So, they're coasting through some easy games in conference, but when they do play the tournament teams, they're taking care of business and then some. So they're still, in my eyes, they're the best team in the country. But we have them at number 2 because of Auburn's resume. But right now, I don't think anyone wants to play Gonzaga.
And at number 1, we got the Auburn Tigers. A little scare this week at Georgia, but they survive, and good teams survive. Especially when you're playing in all these close games come March. There's no way they're going to blow out every team. It's going to be close at some point. And obviously, if you can pull off those wins at other people's places, even, there's nothing to worry about here. At Auburn, Bruce Pearl has been exceptional this year. At Arkansas, could be a tricky game this week. Could be that slip-up game. It seems like they're tiptoeing around the slip-up game. It seems like it's bound to happen soon. And don't be shocked if it happens to Arkansas, but as of right now, what are they on, a 17-game win streak, 15, something insane.
Yeah.
So I think you just can't bet against this Auburn team. And when they lose, they lose. But 22-1 in this year's college basketball, everyone, it seems, has at least 3-4 losses. And you're one of the teams that, I think, the only team still that only has 1 loss. Obviously, you're an elite company this year and deserving of the number 1 spot. And that takes us to the end of our video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Hit that subscribe button down below. And if you have a public profile, once we hit 100 subscribers, we are going to be giving away an item. It is an autographed item, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you're entered into that. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.